Last Friday on the Pix 11 News, we told you about a near miss over Newark International Airport between commercial airliners. It was averted by air traffic controllers doing their job.
Yeah, well, tonight on a Pix 11 Investigates exclusive, we take a look at controllers and what happens to them after things go wrong.
Mario Diaz joins us now with the first part in this in-depth investigation. And Mario, I know you've been working on this for some time.
4 months and counting, Tamsin. Well, do you believe that air traffic controllers are focused on their jobs 100% of the time? We have evidence that is not always the case. And as a result, in the end, people died in some of those cases. But what is even more alarming is where those controllers end up afterwards.
Operations.
Okay, we got plenty of gas for the grill.
Huh?
I said we got plenty of gas for the grill.
You are listening to a phone call at Teterboro Airport between air traffic controller Carlisle Turner and an airport colleague. The date, August 8th, 2009. The focus of the conversation, a scheduled barbecue and a dead cat found earlier in the day on a runway.
Oh my God! Yeah, it was pretty bad. Ugh.
Did it smell? It couldn't smell. It ain't been there that long.
At one point in the call, the federally employed Turner cracks a racial joke.
Oh, disgusting! Oh, that thing was disgusting.
Chinese people do it, so why can't we?
Oh, stop it.
Manhattan aviation attorney Justin Green knows this call all too well.
It was an absolute dereliction of duty. Somebody who stopped doing their job and basically was screwing off on the job.
It is a phone call that still haunts him to this day because of what played out seconds later in the skies over the Hudson River.
3314, be advised, there was an airplane crashed into a helicopter just south of Lincoln there a minute ago.
Yeah, but you know what? And I worked him. We were looking for him also.
If you actually watch the timeline, he hangs up the phone and seconds later the crash happens. So the timeline is really damning to his call being part of the accident.
The mid-air collision left 9 dead. In its accident report, the National Transportation Safety Board stated that the controller's non-pertinent telephone conversation contributed to the crash.
Okay, we got plenty of gas for the grill.
We played Turner's phone call for Senator Cory Booker.
It's jarring to know that really led to people's lives being lost.
Pix 11 News found Carlisle Turner living a suburban lifestyle in Chesapeake, Virginia. Not only is he working again, but as unbelievable as it sounds, he's working here. The air traffic control tower at Newport News Williamsburg International Airport, a frequent destination and flyover zone for high-performance aircraft from the military, as well as commercial jetliners.
It totally surprised me. In fact, at first I thought, that can't be right.
Senator Charles Schumer vividly remembers the crash. He was dismayed that Turner was still working out of an FAA tower.
Even if this gentleman was totally rehabilitated, it sends such a bad signal that they shouldn't do it.
Turner's story resonates with Barry Newman. The Florida aviation attorney had a case from an October 26, 2009 flight where a Texas controller lost his focus. Literally.
The controller was required by his FAA medical certificate to wear glasses while controlling traffic, and he wasn't wearing his glasses that day.
The controller, Mike Ferrier, admitted to not having his glasses in this handwritten statement. Additionally, his vision was not the only issue.
Normally you'd have a black background. What did he do to his screen differently?
The controller decided to set his preferences so that he had a bright blue screen, which was the same color as the worst of the weather, so the two blended together. Where on a black background, the worst of the weather would have stood out very brightly.
In a federal lawsuit, attorneys argued that as a result, the pilot flew into hazardous weather. This is all that was left of the aircraft. 4 people died. As for Ferrier, he's still with the FAA. In fact, he was back on the job weeks after the deadly crash, telling investigators that he had acquired glasses and now wears them during air traffic duties.
Oh, we have 75256 North Tower.
In an extensive investigation, Pix 11 News has identified 15 deadly crashes since 1998 where actions by air traffic controllers were a contributing factor. Those crashes resulted in 54 deaths. The litigation resulting from several of these crashes came at a steep price to American taxpayers. Public records indicate that the federal government has made either verdict or settlement payments of more than $100 million. Additionally, our investigation revealed that Turner and Ferrier are not alone. We uncovered several other controllers involved in a number of these deadly crashes who are currently listed on the agency's online employment directory. working out of FAA towers or control centers.
Personally speaking, over the last 25 years of having practiced aviation law, I can't think of a particular instance where there was an accident involving air traffic control negligence where that controller was removed from their primary responsibility for directing traffic as a result of the accident.
Gregory Winton is a Maryland aviation attorney. Prior to going into private practice, he was an attorney for the Department of Justice and the FAA.
You represented primarily who?
The air traffic controllers and FAA or United States government employees.
There are more than 15,000 controllers across the nation working in towers or at centers like this one just outside of San Diego, California. As part of our investigation, we approached the National Air Traffic Controllers Association as well as the Airline Pilots Association. Both unions declined to participate. They weren't the only ones. On the mission page of the FAA website, the agency uses such words as safety, accountability, and transparency. So we came here to the FAA's headquarters in Washington, D.C., hoping that the agency would be transparent with us about accountability measures surrounding Carlisle Turner as well as other controllers. Because at the very core of this investigation is the public's safety. Their response? An email from an FAA spokeswoman stating that they would respond to all of our inquiries collectively. As for those answers, we're still waiting.
This is a huge embarrassment to the FAA.
Arthur Wolk is an aviation attorney based out of Philadelphia. A pilot himself, listen to how he describes the collaboration between pilots and controllers.
We, as pilots, depend on air traffic control. It is our lifeline.
As for the FAA allowing controllers who have contributed to deadly mistakes going back to control towers or centers?
What really this is the government stonewalling what amounts to incompetent behavior that can, does, and has resulted in death.
Justin Green, who represented the family of the chopper pilot in the Hudson mid-air crash, echoes those sentiments. He also believes that the agency is vested in creating a positive image of its controllers.
I think the FAA, obviously has an interest in not having the controllers blamed.
We tried to speak with lawmakers Senator Jay Rockefeller and Representative Frank Lobiondo, both of whom are leaders of Senate and House committees involving aviation. They declined our interview requests.
It does need to be changed. People need to be held accountable.
Representative John Mica, on the other hand, was available. The Florida congressman is the former chairman of the House Transportation Committee, as well as the former chair of the House Aviation Subcommittee.
The bad players, and they're just a handful, but they have caused death, mayhem, and they're still on the job. That's not fair.
Senator Schumer did not hold back either.
When I heard about Turner, I was shocked. And so hearing that there are others makes me even more worried.
In fact, New York's senior senator now wants to hear from the same agency that failed to respond to us, the FAA.
I'm not going to tell them how to do it, but I want to hear what they're saying.
Representative Mica, whose party loyalty sits across the aisle from Senator Schumer, is in agreement.
If we have to haul people in before Congress and seek, again, the information that you have already found, which is public record, and then act responsibly, we need to do that.
It should be noted that while the NTSB finds fault with pilots in nearly every crash, in the cases that Pix 11 News examined where the federal government did make payouts, it was not only the families of the victims who were compensated, but also relatives of the pilots.
It's been nearly 100 days since the deadliest train accident in Metro North history. Lawmakers have since demanded that the Valhalla Railroad crossing become safer.
Yeah, Pix 11's Murrow Diaz went to see if anything has changed and spoke to those deeply connected to that night, some saying their lives will never be the same.
Reflecting on what the future might have been like is simply too challenging for Alan Brody.
What about our silver anniversary?
The wounds from the night of February 3rd are the kind that will never heal.
Half a dozen people are dead.
Brody's wife Ellen was the driver of the Mercedes SUV that collided with a Metro North Harlem line train traveling approximately 49 miles per hour, according to the National Transportation Safety Board. The collision ignited a fireball and damaged an estimated 480 feet of the third rail. As a result, 400 feet of the live 700-volt electrified line was forced into the first car. A total of 6 people were killed. Remnants of that night remained at the Commerce Street crossing for weeks. It is a crossing that Alan Brody, a former train conductor in his native South Africa, describes as
a trap, basically a death trap.
He is not alone. Back in 2009, the New York State Department of Transportation earmarked $126,000 federal dollars targeted for the potential implementation of additional warning lights for drivers approaching the curve into the Commerce Street crossing. After the crash, a state DOT spokesperson said the lights would not have made a difference in this tragedy because the lights were to be 200 feet from the crossing. Pix 11 News did ask the state DOT as to what happened to the $126,000. A state official says that the agency has not spent 1 cent of the money. Additionally, the Federal Railroad Administration has been for years aware of the potential dangers at the crossing. Last year, the Office of Safety Analysis, Highway Rail Crossing Safety and Trespass Prevention released this report that lists the Commerce Street crossing as having a predicted collision rate of 3% per year. That ranks as one of the highest in Westchester County. It should be noted that it was the FRA's own computer model, the Web Accident Prediction System, that produced a predicted collision rate of 3%.
It's unacceptable. Any percentage is unacceptable because it means somebody's going to be killed.
Andrew Maloney has vast experience with transportation accidents as well as the law.
I'm arguing before the 9 Supreme Court justices.
Maloney is an attorney with Kreindler & Kreindler in Manhattan. While he does not represent Brody, he is seeking millions on behalf of 12 passengers who survived the February inferno of the first car. He sums up the Commerce Street crossing in 4 words.
That crossing is unsafe.
According to the FRA, the Roaring Brook crossing a few miles up the road has the same accident probability rate as that of Commerce Street. However, unlike Roaring Brook, there are no warning bells at Commerce Street to alert of an oncoming train. Additionally, the railroad sign going into the crossing appears blocked from a driver's perspective, even when the trees have no leaves. And a post that stares directly into oncoming traffic, where a railroad sign can be placed, stands empty. Moreover, the 2 crossings that bookend Commerce Street, Stevens Avenue and Lakeview Avenue, both have street lights over the railroad crossing. And while Commerce Street has no lights illuminating the crossing, the MTA does have 2 industrial lamps that light up the entry to one of its unmanned electrical power substations. As you can see, those industrial lamps are only a few yards away from the deadly crossing. Improving the lighting around the crossing, having an alarm system, enhancing the signs leading into the crossing, are those expensive fixes?
Not at all. Those are easy to do and not expensive and should be done right away.
In recent years, the FRA has issued emergency orders to eliminate the immediate hazard of death as well as personal injury after accidents. 5 days after the deadly Hudson Line train derailment, the FRA put out an emergency order that impacted certain areas of the Hudson Line. The agency confirmed to Pix 11 News that no orders were issued following the Valhalla crash. Less than 24 hours following the Valhalla accident, NTSB board member Robert Sumwalt told news media the following.
By the time we've completed this investigation, we will know everything that we need to know.
Sumwalt even requested that anyone with any information on the crash to please email investigators at
witness@ntsb.gov.
Pix 11 News has learned from the first passenger who exited the train while he was on fire that the NTSB has not contacted him after reaching out to the agency. This email was sent by the passenger 4 days after the accident from his hospital bed at Westchester Medical Center. Pix 11 News obtained phone records showing that the passenger then called the NTSB on February 13th. As for what happened, on the call, someone said they would get back to me for sure. What response did he get back from the NTSB?
None. None. They haven't interviewed him.
And as Pix 11 News has learned, there are others in the first car who have not been interviewed. We informed the NTSB of our findings just over 24 hours ago. The NTSB then sent us the following statement. One of the NTSB's goals in the Valhalla accident is to understand what happened in the first car of the train. Passenger interviews are part of that effort and are ongoing. The investigation is continuing, and we expect additional passengers to be interviewed. It was just last week that Philip Rosati, the attorney representing Alan Brody, filed a notice of claim seeking monetary damages. He describes the crossing simply as
extremely hazardous.
For many, it was just that on the night of February 3rd, and it remains that way to this day. Brody says he has visited the site several times since the deadly accident, and like others, he has a hard time trying to comprehend as to why nothing has been done.
As far as I can tell, they haven't changed anything.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel that something is deeply wrong.
Philip Rosati's Brody's attorney says that nothing may be done because of the legal action that is pending. Meanwhile, the FRA says they have launched a national grade crossing safety campaign. John and Tamsin. No matter how old the fighter pilot and some of us may be, there is nothing quite like an air show. And while an air show can decorate the sky with aerial artistry that stretches towards the heavens, the prevalent theme on the ground is pride in America.
You don't find any of them planes made in China.
Right. Especially if the main attraction is the roaring thunder of the Navy Blue Angels or the Air Force Thunderbirds.
The red, white, and blue on them, red, white, and blue in the air, it's the ultimate American thing.
While the fighter jets may be the symbol of American engineering at its best, the merchandise that showcases the iconic images of these two high-performance teams is anything but. Pix 11 News recently attended air shows at Jones Beach as well as Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And what we discovered was clothing, specifically shirts and hats, made in the Caribbean, Central America, and China, all being sold by vendors who were provided with licenses from the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. Additionally, we did not come across any vendors with clothing merchandise that was made in the U.S. of A.
Despicable. It really is.
Ben Jeffries is a former U.S. Army specialist in Saudi Arabia. Jeffries was not alone when it came to expressing disappointment over the lack of made in the USA merchandise.
It's a shame.
Tony Sparacco is a Vietnam vet who nearly lost his life on the battlefield. He views it as a missed opportunity for American workers.
It's not right. It should be made here in America.
Then there was Michelle Miguela.
Turn around, bud.
A proud mother.
100% certified Marine mom.
Watch her reaction when I asked her to tell me where the shirt sporting the Blue Angels logo was made.
Haiti. Wow. That's actually upsetting, depressing.
And as far as the hat that her son was wearing?
It's an American flag with a Made in China sticker.
Bob Anderson operates the Armed Forces store based out of Tallahassee, Florida.
We specialize in Blue Angel apparel and Thunderbird apparel.
While he says the printings for his t-shirts are done in the U.S., most of his product, including the original shirt itself and all of his hats, are imported. The reason?
The Made in USA apparel is just, it's not available, or if it's available, the pricing is so high on it that people would have sticker shock beyond all belief.
Mark Andal describes vendors peddling imported products depicting the U.S. military as follows.
I really believe it comes down to, Mario, laziness at this point.
Andal is the owner of the Made in America store located in Elma, New York. His company sells only items that are 100% American made.
Clothing is our #1 product, and we can get it at a really fair cost and make a profit margin on clothing right now.
U.S. Representative Yvette Clarke out of Brooklyn sits on the subcommittee of commerce that focuses on manufacture and trade.
And it is frustrating.
After revealing to the Congresswoman what we found, Representative Clarke conveyed to me that she does not mind utilizing her position on the Hill in Washington, D.C., to push the Air Force and the Navy into doing a better job of oversight.
I think that certainly as a member of Congress, we can do everything we can within our abilities through legislation and otherwise to say, we'd like you to make this a priority.
As for the two jet performance teams, the Blue Angels do not handle merchandising and are not a party to the license agreements according to the U.S. Navy's Office of Information. A spokesperson adding that all merchandising and vendor license agreements are coordinated by higher commands according to Navy policy and trademark guidance. The Navy requires vendors to comply with all applicable state and federal labor laws and regulations. Meanwhile, the Thunderbirds responded through the Air Force Public Affairs Office with regards to our inquiry on oversight. A spokeswoman stating that the Air Force Branding and Trademark Licensing Office is responsible for licensing Air Force logos for commercial use. They have procedures in place that encourage fair and open competition, as well as promote social responsibility. However, there are others who have a different perspective regarding social responsibility and merchandise.
I believe that they should have their products made right here in the good old US of A.
I would rather put my money into something that's going to benefit the men and women working hard in the United States.
So does the military make money off merchandise that is outsourced by vendors? According to an Air Force spokeswoman, the answer is yes, as the military is authorized by law to collect royalties for the use of logos like the Thunderbirds as well as the Blue Angels. One final note, the Air Force did confirm to Pix 11 News that this is the first time they have dealt with a Made in the USA inquiry regarding the Thunderbirds and imported merchandise.
This past weekend, more than 200 retired generals and admirals took out a full-page ad in the New York Times opposing the nuclear deal with Iran. Now, this comes after more than 300 rabbis came out to support it. The deal, which is set for a congressional vote in a few weeks, is generating a lot of discussion. But as Mario Diaz points out, there are some who say there is one group of victims who are being forgotten. It is tonight's cover story.
For more than 35 years, there have been volatile chapters surrounding relations between Iran and the United States. Several of those chapters are filled with the loss of innocent lives.
The truck detonated, blowing the building to pieces.
The October 23, 1983 suicide truck bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut, in which Iran was found to have played a role in by a federal court, remains as one of the military's deadliest.
241 Marines were killed.
That total was surpassed in dramatic fashion when the unimaginable unfolded in 2001.
9/11 is the elephant in the room.
Nearly 14 years after 9/11, the area once known as Ground Zero is filled with construction, smiles, a new tower, and of course, pools that reflect on the lives of those lost. However, what has not been in the clear to nearly everyone is that in 2011, Iran was on the losing end of a judgment in federal court in Lower Manhattan for more than $6 billion. To this day, the 47 families who lost loved ones in the attacks of 9/11, who are a part of what is known as the Havlish suit in reference to Donald Havlish, who died on the 101st floor of the South Tower, well, those families have yet to collect one penny from Iran.
It's a disgrace. I don't think we'll ever see a nickel of any of that money, any of the families.
Jim Riches is a retired FDNY deputy chief who lost his firefighting son in the attacks. He was not a part of the Havlish case, but feels that Iran, who has reportedly received billions through sanction relief during recent negotiations, should make payments on the billions owed for 9/11, as well as the deadly Beirut attack more than 30 years ago.
They should be held accountable.
In fact, in 2009, federal judge Royce Lamberth stated in a decision that this court has grown increasingly troubled by the fact that no matter how hard they struggle, and struggle they must, it is virtually impossible for the victims in these terrorism cases to collect on the civil judgment entered against Iran in this court.
Has Iran made any kind of payments back to anyone in the U.S. even after that money was released to them?
Not that I know of. Certainly not 9/11. I don't think so.
Jim Kreindler is a terrorism and aviation attorney deeply involved in a 9/11 lawsuit against Iran. He describes the legal process as challenging, adding that
we would like nothing better than to see the administration very clearly say we are going to hold all terror supporters accountable, including the biggest terror case that's ever existed by far, 9/11.
Yet those talking points have yet to emerge. Fred Brewer, who lost his wife on 9/11, is one of those currently suing Iran. He recently conveyed to me that his primary focus is a solution to terrorism. But when I asked if he ever thinks that he will see $1 from the Iranian government for its actions, Brewer responded with the following.
I hope so. I think it's part of the process by which Iran becomes responsible for its behavior in the past. And the only way that they'll be responsible for their behavior in the future is to pay for grievances that they've caused other groups in the past.
And again, the key word for a lot of the victims is hope in this regard, hope that they can somehow get paid somewhere down the road. But a lot of people that I spoke to who were involved in these cases, including one of the widows who was the second who signed the Havlish case over the weekend, told me that for them, this is simply politics as usual, and they are the ones who are being forgotten.
You really got a feel for these people. Do you have a dollar figure on these frozen assets for Iran?
The number that's been reported out there is approximately $11.8 billion that Iran was provided with throughout the actual negotiation process to strike this deal.
Almost double what they would like to get.
Exactly.
I saw the president in your piece. Have you reached out to the White House? Have you gotten any kind of comment?
We did send 2 emails today to the White House, and we did place a phone call to them asking them exactly about how much it was paid to Iran during the negotiation process. We have yet to hear back from the White House. We do have plans to reach out to the federal delegation that represents New York State on this.
Stay on it, Mario. Thank you very much.